The movie this week was picked by you.
Me.
It is Dìdi from last year. It's a coming of age comedy / drama.
Yeah, and so it's set in 2008 and written, filmed, directed, produced by someone named Sean Wang, and it because of when it is set, the thing that like got me into picking it was, oh man, I wouldn't have been that much younger than the character. So in 2008, the main character is 13. I would have been at that time about to turn 19, 20-ish, so somewhere in there. And so he is someone who, it's like the early days of social media. He's on MySpace. He's on Facebook. He is going through puberty. He is trying to make friends. He is trying to have romantic relationships, all of these sorts of things that, we have all gone through. But again, the lens of which this movie comes out, I wondered how similar to, real life will this one feel for me. Kent, the way that I think I described this on Letterboxd after I finished watching it the other night was like, it's in a way, it reminded me of Superbad, but just nowhere near as funny, but I guess in a way more realistic than Superbad. And like sometimes I enjoyed it, and other times it's not that I disliked the movie. It's like it was a part of my life, and I don't think any of us really want to go back to when we're 13, 14, 15 years old. Like I hated, in hindsight now I can say I really did not like that age. It was not an enjoyable time, all of the changes, and you kind of feel for the kid, especially doing so at the dawn of the internet. And in this story, it is of, he is, I guess we never hear directly, do we, Ken? Is he first generation? Is he second generation American? But, he comes from a family where his grandma only speaks Chinese, and then his mom can go back and forth between English and Chinese.
Well, the dad's working back overseas.
And the dad is gone. And so I certainly don't have that relationship, right? Like I my parents lived in Nebraska. But I found it very interesting while not maybe totally like loving it the entire time.
What this picture is on top of what you said, this is a semi-autobiographical picture.
Mm-hmm.
All right. This Sean Wang won. He got an Oscar nomination for his documentary short he did about his grandmothers, including the woman who plays the grandmother in the film is his real grandma.
Okay.
Oh, wow. Awesome.
And that got the attention of some bigger Hollywood types, including Spike Jonze, the director. The talking squirrel, that's Spike Jonze's voice.
Okay.
So that let him get this picture together that he'd been writing for like 8 years. And he was a skateboard kid in Fremont, California, which is where this thing is filmed. Some of the film is shot, the bedroom scenes, that's his real bedroom from when he was a kid.
Wow.
His mom was a location scout for it. She found the places for him to do this. He says, I wasn't as like basically such a sad sack as the kid in the movie. I was a little better than that, but everything that happened in the movie rings true to what I went through. And that's why exactly what you're saying about not really wanting to relive that very badly. Yeah. And that's why it rings that way. But I thought it was really a good movie. And I'm just going to read the final paragraph of my review from last year.
Okay.
Perhaps because it is so autobiographical, Dìdi doesn't end with a high stakes drama, turn the story into a happily ever after tale, or make Chris act far older than his years. Instead, it follows him through a summer of hope and loss and lessons learned that makes for convincingly realistic viewing.
And I thought it was really realistic.
Yeah.
One of the things that I found interesting, Kent, about the main character was he's not really likable throughout a lot of this movie. I think at one point my wife pointed out, I don't remember which of the scenes, but he always is lying You know, he's whether it's the skaters bringing him on as the guy that's going to shoot all their stuff. The entire conversation
He doesn't have a clue about what he's doing.
The love interest, right, where she's making a reference to a movie, and he's like, "Oh, I get that." I mean, their whole thing starts with her saying, "Let's watch a movie," or "What's your favorite movie?" And he brings up a movie that is one of her favorites. He hasn't seen it, but then it just keeps going, and it escalates to the point where, she's having a conversation with him, and she obviously can't trust a word that he's saying, and it's like that multiple times throughout this movie. And again, we're all that age at some point in time, and I don't think that any of us would want to, go back and talk to ourselves at 13 or 14 years old. But I found that was an interesting choice given the semi-biographical nature of it.
Yeah, the other element that I didn't really emphasize in my review, I mean, I talked about it a little bit, but other people really picked out on was this is maybe the first really good movie about life on the internet in its early days. Because he's on MySpace and uses AIM, Instant Messenger, all of that. And it's how they did, funny, the kid that plays the main character couldn't figure out how to run the flip phone
in real life.
They gave it to him and he couldn't even figure out how to use it because
they couldn't relate.
That was a razor too,
but this shows that life in a very realistic fashion, and it's completely different now 15 years later, right?
Yeah.
So I was 11 in 2008. So I felt like I was extremely close when I was watching this movie. I felt extremely close to the culture of this movie. Because I was 11, I didn't really start having my time on the internet until a couple years later. And by then, we were all on Facebook and not MySpace. We were using MSN Messenger and not AOL. But it was all basically the same. The way he would type, going to somebody's Facebook profile and looking at their likes, talking to them like that. I knew exactly what he was thinking when he was making the decisions he was making without just like the online decisions. When she offered to give him her Facebook, in my head, I'm like, oh no, it's serious. Like she is interested, because that's what that meant in that time. You gave somebody your Facebook when you wanted to talk to them more and let them more into you in your life. Even the very awkward things, like he would kind of lie to fit in with all these different groups of people. It's like, oh yes, I can do this. I'd like to do this. And obviously that, wasn't true, but he was just trying to find his place and fit in. It was very jarring to go back because I was just getting these flashbacks.
It's not that long ago, and yet it seems like it's forever ago.
And that's where this movie lost me, because I didn't participate in that world at all.
It was hell, John. It was hell.
That was the part that I was trying to get past a little bit, because I got what this movie was going after, and so I certainly got the whole premise of it, and I thought it was well executed, especially the part that you talked about earlier, Kent, that this is basically just like a snapshot of this period of time, and that it wasn't meant to have this Breakfast Club like ending where everyone makes peace and these and the losers become friends with the popular kids and whatnot.
It's just a couple months time.
It's just a couple of months time. So I liked that part of it. But yeah, it was hard for me at times to kind of, it's just the whole language of, Do
you find that harder? Typing. So like if you went and watched a movie like let's say the same exact premise, but it's set in like the 50s. Do you find it harder to connect with like one where it's set in 2008, just given the technological like you feel closer to someone who grew up like in Kent's generation than you do somebody like a teenager
absolutely.
now.
Because the communication was basically the same, right? There was no internet. So.
Social media layer that added that other layer to growing up, especially in that period when it was just starting to get big.
Right. So
it was massive.
But beyond that, again, I thought the story itself was good. The Chris character was a jerk. He pees in his sister's hand lotion, for crying out loud. I guess that was the part that was a little weird to me because she's going off to college. And listen, my brother and I fought, but we wouldn't do anything that out of bounds. It's just like I was stunned when he was like,
Yeah.
"What is he doing?"
I was relieved when I realized he was peeing in the lotion.
Yeah.
That was wild.
Yeah, that's some messed up stuff right
so
there.
so there was a part of me that it was sometimes hard to find him as a sympathetic character.
I don't
Yeah,
know
for
if
sure.
you were supposed to, though. I mean,
And we probably were.
he's a 13-year-old boy. 13-year-old boys suck.
I no joke. I texted my parents and I was like, "Man, we just watched this movie, and I want to apologize for any dumb crap that I did when I was that age." Like, it really did kind of make me finish and be like, "Man, what a horrible age! It's just the stupidest age. You know, middle school is so dumb."
Or like even when you're hanging out with friends and they ask you to take the pictures of them, and you're just always kind of feeling on the outside, even though you're with the friends.
Which is why this movie is so good. Look at what we're talking about, right? People relate to it, and they relate to it at first as their own life, but also then as this depiction of life in 2008 when, as Nick just said, the social media and all of that changed everything, but it hadn't completely changed. So they're not spending the whole day in the basement, right? They're going out and doing stuff with other kids, then come in and do whatever they do online. And that's what, and it takes, I think, some, I don't know if courage is the right word, but this guy's portraying himself as a jerk.
Yeah.
Some real self-awareness.
Right? He's making himself look like a total jerk, which he may or may not have been. But I think that's why this movie is so good. It did win the audience award at Sundance the year it came out, which is pretty prestigious. I think he really hit on something here.
And you know, it's was this his first film?
First feature, yes. He had that short about his grandma's, the documentary short.
Okay.
And then this was his first feature. Yeah. He was under 30 when he made it. It's like 28, 29.
Is it now? This is he as of, you know, this is according to Wiki. He hasn't done anything since, but this was only just last year. Is it going to be difficult to move on, given that you've used the autobiographical part of it? Now you've got to find something else.
We'll see, won't we?
Yeah.
My suspicion is it might not be written by, right? I mean, he could find something out there to direct, I think, in a vein that might have some kind of similar commentary or whatever. I would suspect he can't do another, because what is there if he's going to do another semi-autobiographical movie? Does anybody care about a kid going to film school? No. Right? So, yeah, but I think he's obvious. I mean, he's got an Oscar nomination when he was like 25.
Gosh, that's crazy.
He's got this movie out, which is really good, before he was 30. You know, I think he's a talent. The other thing that I think is important to note about this is that it's about a Taiwanese, Chinese American, and that because as he said in interviews, when I made this movie, there weren't any Asian like star athletes. There weren't, actors, whatever, that you were looking up to. We really felt like they were outsiders, outcast. Nick just used that word, outsiders, right? And this is a look at that as well, which is another layer of it.
Hey, Kent, what do you think moving forward? The coming of age stories, you have this and you start going further backwards. And, Superbad was obviously a huge touchstone for me. That came out the summer after I graduated high school. You can go back further and you're going to have like a Dazed and Confused. We did, what's the first George Lucas movie that they directed? We did that a couple of years ago.
We did 8th grade.
Yeah, we did 8th grade. So like there are all these movies. What is the future of them for the next generation of the characters in these movies? Like, what happens when suddenly it's smartphones all the time, and what happens when it's like, is this kind of thing going to become a dying industry, if you will, because the characters, I don't want to just generalize all young people is on their phones, but it's like, I mean, I know that there is a kind of an epidemic of just, people not going outside. Like, what is that going to be like for these future
That's a good
movies?
question.
These movies are all going to be on TikTok.
They're just going to be on TikTok, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. And I think you lose anything that would be remotely cinematic about it, right? I mean, how boring is a movie of somebody doing
where people are just on their phones?
I mean, that's part of the reason I really liked 8th Grade, though, that Bo Burnham movie,
Mhm.
because that was kind of about the same thing that this movie was, but in a more modern sense, where they were smartphones and the TikTok and everything.
Yeah.
And I think that was still a compelling, well-done movie.
Yeah, that's true.
Because at the end of the day, I think these movies are more about the characters and the experiences in that time period than what's happening around them,
Yeah, but I mean, if they're not hanging out as much in person,
Yeah, it just makes you wonder if those types of stories will be interesting enough to tell.
That's what I'm asking, because if people aren't hanging out with each other as much as, and people said the same thing about my generation. Man, Josh, your generation doesn't hang out with people anymore. It's like, damn, if they're saying that about me, what are they saying about a 12, 13, 14-year-old now?
Yeah. And I think that's a real good question. And my guess is if you're going to get a compelling film about that, it's going to come from somebody of that generation.
Oh, sure.
Mm-hmm.
Not one of us older looking at them. It's got to come from them. And, they're 5 years away from being able to make a movie like that. Maybe 4 or 5.
Yeah.
And it'll be 15 seconds long on TikTok.
Yes. It was refreshing. It was refreshing to me to see this movie happen. As awkward as it was, it's the closest I've gotten so far to seeing a coming of age movie that was when I came of age. And I think it really resonated with me. And I can't wait. Hopefully, we get more that are just creeping a little closer to like the 2010, 2011 kind of era.
We'll get there.
I hope so.
Why wouldn't we?
Dazed and Confused, boys. If you watch that, that's my adolescent
What a
life.
classic movie,
I
Kent.
love that movie.